If you're registering with FMCSA for the first time, or if you're expanding your operations to offer additional services, you need to understand the requirements for operating authority. Conducting business without having the required operating authority can result in significant fines and penalties. In this video, we cover two types of operating authority: brokers and freight forwarders. If you are unsure whether you need operating authority in addition to a USDOT number for your specific operations, please watch the Operating Authority Overview for New Applicants video found here. A separate video covers the types of motor carrier operating authority for property, passengers, or household goods. Let's discuss broker operating authority. A broker is often described as the middle person between the shipper and the motor carrier. A broker arranges transportation of property or household goods, but doesn't actually transport goods or take possession of the property being transported. A broker never assumes responsibility for the cargo being transported, but does make sure transportation is available to the shipper. There are two types of broker operating authority, depending on the type of goods for which you arrange transport. The first is for brokers of property except household goods, and the second is for brokers of household goods. Household goods for purposes of transportation are personal effects and property used in a home, such as furniture, being transported to a dwelling at the request of the householder who also pays for the transportation. Before discussing the details of these two types of operating authority, this is a good time to also mention one type of broker operating authority FMCSA does not issue. There are brokers of passenger transportation, people who arrange for but do not provide passenger transportation. FMCSA does not register or regulate brokers who perform these services. If you receive payment for arranging the transportation of property belonging to others by using an authorized motor carrier, you require broker of property operating authority, unless that property is considered household goods. We'll discuss the requirements for household goods brokers later. Here's an example of activities that constitute property brokerage. If a shipper uses Company X's booking agents and their network of third-party motor carriers to ensure Company Y's goods are transported safely from Vermont to Massachusetts by an FMCSA-approved company, and Company X does not take responsibility for the goods, then Company X is required to have broker of property operating authority. Company X is not a motor carrier because it doesn't own or operate commercial motor vehicles, and it's not a freight forwarder because it never directly handles the cargo being shipped. If you receive payment for arranging the transportation of household goods by using an authorized motor carrier, then you require the broker of household goods operating authority. For example, if Company X arranges for household moves using a vetted network of third-party motor carriers who are all properly registered with FMCSA to ensure a customer's furniture and other belongings are delivered on time to complete a move from one state into another, then Company X is required to have broker of household goods operating authority. Now, let's explain the requirements for freight forwarder operating authority. A freight forwarder is a company or person that provides transportation of property, assembles and consolidates shipments, and provides for break bulk and distribution of the shipments for compensation. Unlike a broker, the freight forwarder is an entity that acts as a link between the shipper and the final point of distribution. A freight forwarder takes responsibility for the freight and can arrange for various transportation services, such as ocean shipping on cargo ships, road transport, and expedited shipping via air freight. The freight forwarder may or may not actually participate in transporting the property. Please note, a freight forwarder is not a motor carrier who hauls general freight for compensation. There are two distinct types of freight forwarder operating authority. The first is freight forwarder of property, except household goods. For example, if Company X receives a shipment of 20,000 pounds of clothing from a factory in Louisiana, and then it separates the shipment into two 10,000-pound shipments to be transported to California and Washington by a motor carrier, Company X is required to have freight forwarder of property, except household goods, operating authority. The second type is freight forwarder of household goods, which is, as the name suggests, for freight forwarders responsible for handling household goods. For example, if Company X receives crates of household goods, separates and distributes those crates as directed by the householders, and provides transportation of the items for a move from a residence in North Dakota to multiple residences in South Dakota using FMCSA licensed companies, Company X requires Freight Forwarder of Household Goods Operating Authority. The FMCSA issued regulatory guidance clarifying the definitions of broker and bona fide agents on June 16, 2023. FMCSA issued the guidance in response to a mandate in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the Fiscal Year 2023 Appropriations Act. The guidance clarifies the definitions in the Code of Federal Regulations, with an eye toward efficiency and defining financial responsibilities. The final guidance arms freight brokers and entities operating as bona fide agents or dispatch services in the trucking industry with information needed to help make appropriate decisions for their operations. It also helps clarify for regulated carriers whether they should work with entities that do not have broker authority and associated financial responsibility. The guidance offers clarification for brokers, dispatch services, trade associations, and other stakeholders across the trucking industry. The guidance also provides examples of when a dispatch service could represent more than one carrier without needing broker authority and when such authority is required. FMCSA works to give regulated entities the information they need for efficient operations, and this guidance helps entities know when operations require broker authority. The final guidance can be viewed at this link. All freight forwarders that perform transfer, collection, or delivery service must maintain appropriate levels of bodily injury and property damage, or BIPD, insurance and environmental restoration coverage. The BIPD liability insurance coverage requirements are based upon the gross vehicle weight rating of the commercial vehicles operated and the type of commodities being transported. For vehicles weighing 10,001 pounds or more, the minimum amount ranges from $750,000 to $5 million. The amount is $300,000 for non-hazardous freight moved only in vehicles weighing under 10,001 pounds. FMCSA requires all freight forwarders to maintain minimum levels of cargo insurance in the amount of $5,000 for loss of or damage to property carried on any one motor vehicle, or $10,000 for loss of or damage to, or aggregate of losses or damages to, property occurring at any one time and place. Freight forwarders that will not operate commercial vehicles may request a waiver of BIPD insurance requirements. The freight forwarder must certify it will not own or operate any motor vehicles used on highways in the transportation of property, perform transfer, collection, or delivery services, and have motor vehicles operated under its direction and control in the performance of transfer, collection, or delivery services. Both brokers and freight forwarders must have either a surety bond filed by an insurance company or a trust fund agreement filed by a financial institution in the amount of $75,000. All insurance companies and financial institutions must be approved by FMCSA and submit these electronic filings with FMCSA. FMCSA requires both brokers and freight forwarders to designate a process agent. Freight forwarders that operate commercial vehicles must designate a process agent in each state they operate in or through. You must have a BOC3 form on file submitted by a process agent or a blanket company. Blanket companies have process agents in every state and will electronically submit the form on your behalf. FMCSA maintains a list of approved blanket companies on the L&I public website. Please visit the link shown here and select Blanket Companies. Brokers and freight forwarders that will not operate commercial vehicles must designate a process agent in each state in which they maintain an office or establish contracts through using a blanket company. Or a broker or freight forwarder that does not operate commercial vehicles may file a BOC3 form on their behalf in their state. It is essential to understand the broker and freight forwarder operating authority types so you can identify which ones you need to apply for and, by extension, which insurance requirements you must maintain. Remember, it is your responsibility to follow up with the insurance company or financial institution to verify FMCSA has received and approved the required insurance forms. Failure to promptly submit the required forms and documentation will delay application processing and can result in the dismissal of the application and loss of the application fee. For more details, please view these videos found on the FMCSA registration website. If you require additional information, please contact us via email or chat by visiting ask.fmcsa.dot.gov. Use the links at the top of the page and then scroll down to the bottom to start your email or chat. You may also call us at 800-832-5660. Thank you.